29 points per game, 10 rebounds, and 8 assists a game in the playoffs. Who was this star? Is this the greatest player of all time? Surely this guy's team won the championship, right? No. This was the stat line of Luka Doncic in the 2023-2024 playoffs, and he was an absolute demon. In the regular season, Luka Doncic's stat line was one of the best we've ever seen. He missed just 12 games and had 34 points per game on 38% shooting from beyond the arc, while nearly averaging a triple-double. Somehow, he only finished third place in MVP voting that season because of the Mavericks being the number 5 seed. In a very strong Western Conference, the Dallas Mavericks had 50 wins, showing that they were a sneaky pick to make a deep run in this postseason. In the first round of the playoffs, Luka and the Mavs faced off against the LA Clippers, who'd become kind of rivals of the Mavericks. In the first 2 playoff appearances for Luka, he lost them in the first round both times, and this series didn't start out well either. In Game 1, the Mavericks were overwhelmed by the Clippers, with Harden scoring 28 along with 8 assists to beat the Mavs, despite Luka's 33 points and 13 rebounds. Game 2 was much better. In a back-and-forth game, the Mavericks pull away late thanks to Luka's 32 points and Kyrie's 23. The Mavericks really started to round into form in Game 3 though. Despite Kawhi's return, the Mavericks won in relatively easy fashion, 101 to 90. However, the Clippers struck back with anger in Game 4. With 5 minutes and 43 seconds left in the first half, the Mavericks were losing by a whopping 31 points. Thanks to James Harden and Paul George's hot start, the Clippers were dominating. However, the Mavericks began to slowly chip into the lead. As each rally happened, the Mavericks crowd started to gain momentum. Pressure built as the lead was cut down to 11 midway through the third. By the fourth quarter, the lead was just 4. It seemed inevitable that the Mavericks were about to complete the biggest comeback in NBA playoff history, but the Clippers struck back. To start the fourth, they went on a 10-3 run to bring the lead back up to 11. However, the Mavericks once again chipped into the lead, slowly but surely tying the game with 4 minutes left. But Harden was still hot and trading buckets with Doncic and Irving until he missed. Mavericks 105, Clippers 104 after a miracle 3-pointer from Kyrie Irving. Unfortunately, a clutch fadeaway 3-pointer by Paul George leading into a Kyrie missed layup gave the Clippers the advantage, one they would not lose, and the Clippers tied up the series. Still, this game broke them. Despite being spotted 31 points, they still nearly lost. So, the Mavericks dominated in Game 5 and 6, riding Luka's 35 in Game 5 and Kyrie's 30 in Game 6 to wrap up the series and set up a date with the number 1 seeded Oklahoma City Thunder. Game 1 was bad. The Thunder were a hydraulic press that slowly squeezed the Mavericks to death through a balanced attack. However, the Mavericks snagged both games 2 and 3 off the back of PJ Washington, who unexpectedly scored 29 in Game 2 and added on 27 in Game 3. In both games, the Mavericks pulled away late to beat the Thunder. But the Thunder snatched Game 4, tying up the series and regained home court advantage, going back to Oklahoma City. In the pivotal Game 5, it was time for Luka Magic. He had a 31-point triple-double and lifted the Mavericks over the Thunder for a pivotal 3-2 series lead against the top seed. Now, going into Dallas with their backs against the wall, SGA and the Thunder would not back down. It looked as if we were going to a Game 7 after Holmgren put down a jam with just 20 seconds left. But a controversial foul call on a PJ Washington 3-pointer gave the Mavericks the win despite Shea's 36 points. In the pivotal Game 6, Doncic led the team with 29 points and 10 assists, leading the Mavericks back to the conference finals after they'd been ousted by the Warriors back in 2022. They would be met by the Minnesota Timberwolves, who had just stunned the defending champion Denver Nuggets by coming back from down 20 in Game 7. It seemed to be Minnesota's time, but Luka refused to let that happen. On the road in Game 1, Luka Doncic took over at the end of the game. 15 fourth-quarter points led to the dagger. During the second game, it seemed that the Timberwolves would tie up the series. They took a 12-point halftime lead. However, the Mavericks slowly crept back into the game. Backed by Kyrie Irving's 20 points and Luka's 32, the Mavericks cut into the lead and the game went back and forth through the fourth quarter. Still, the Timberwolves led by 5 with just over a minute left in the game. Kyrie Irving hit a 3 that happened to be Luka's 13th assist of the game. Then, as time winded down, and the 7'1" Defensive Player of the Year Rudy Gobert bearing down upon him, Luka Doncic stepped back for the biggest shot of the series.
Doncic has the ball, down by 2. There's the switch. Gobert is out there. Doncic maneuvers for the lead. Got it! Got it! What a shot! Dallas has taken the lead.
Then Naz Reid's potential winner just came out, and the Mavericks stole both games on the road. Once again, Game 3 was a nail-biter. Entering the fourth quarter, the game was all tied up at 87, but the Mavericks were possessed. More specifically, Luka was possessed. Kyrie and Luka combined for 21 in the final period, and Doncic specifically helped them pull away the final minutes. 3 games to none. The Mavericks had unbelievably taken all 3 games to begin the series, all with clutch contributions from Luka Doncic. The Timberwolves just couldn't beat them when the Mavericks turned it up. Finally, the Mavericks lost Game 4. Even though Luka had a 28-point triple-double, Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards were able to force a Game 5. But that game was all Luka. In a 21-point blowout victory, Luka scored 36 and grabbed 10 boards in the comfortable win for Dallas. They had done it, the NBA Finals. Luka's consistency throughout the season had been huge for the Mavericks all year long, and this was being shown in the playoffs. I talked about who led the Mavericks in points after most of these games, and this has almost always been Luka, consistently in the 30-point range. But now, it was time for the Mavericks' most difficult challenge. The Boston Celtics were steamrolling. They had been wronged too many times by the basketball gods to lose another NBA Finals. They've been chasing this high since their last championship in 2008, and this historically dominant franchise has been devastated year after year. The previous season, in 2023, the Boston Celtics were stunned by the number 8 seeded Miami Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals after nearly coming back from down 3 games to none. This season, they've lost just 2 playoff games, and they continued rolling in Game 1. In former Dallas Maverick Kristaps Porzingis' return to the court, the Celtics won by 18, and this game was never close. Despite Luka's best efforts with 30 points, the Mavericks had no chance. He would have to score 50 for them to win. In Game 2, the Mavericks came out swinging. They knew they couldn't go down 2-0 against a team as good as the Celtics. Despite another 32-point triple-double from Luka, Drew freaking Holiday scored 26 points on 78% shooting from the field. And in the fourth quarter, the Celtics kept a comfortable lead for the entire time, preventing any Mavericks run from mounting. Back in Dallas for Game 3, things were tense. The Mavs led by just 1 at the half. Unfortunately, the Celtics were poised to take that commanding 3-0 lead that the Mavericks had in the Western Conference Finals. The Celtics outscored the Mavericks 35-19 in the third quarter, pulling away for the victory despite a late charge by the Mavericks. And that was about it. The Mavericks blew out the Celtics to finally get 1 win in the series in Game 4, but the Celtics returned the favor in Game 5 to clinch the series win. But even though the season ended on a sour note, we shouldn't ever forget how dominant Luka Doncic was in this postseason. The Mavericks' amazing run showed that this version of the team could win a championship. They just ran into a buzzsaw. Just run it back next year and you'll be fine. The Mavericks have a 25-year-old superstar that has very little injury history and wants to stay a Maverick for life. He'll eventually win a championship, and it will surely be glorious for all the Mavericks fans that stay dedicated to him for the good and the bad. Now just don't randomly trade him away mid-season.
Nothing shocks me about this game.
And that Drew rim.